All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into Europe, a continent that's really caught in a tough spot. You've got a war raging on its border, some serious fractures from the inside, and an old, critical alliance that is under just immense pressure. So, you have to ask, is this alliance, the one that basically defined the 20th century, about to just break? It's a serious question, because right now Europe is facing what you could only call a perfect storm of challenges. I mean, you've got war on the doorstep, political turmoil from within, and all of this could fundamentally reshape its entire future.
And listen, this isn't just speculation. You've got policy experts, the people who study this stuff day in and day out, and they are sounding the alarm. They're pointing to this convergence of crises that's putting an immense, maybe even an unprecedented strain on the whole continent.
Okay, so let's break this down. To really get a handle on what's going on, we have to look at the big picture. What are the core pressures facing Europe right now?
And what's so striking here is that the pressure is coming from literally all sides. This isn't just one problem, it's a multi-front challenge. You've got a strained relationship with its oldest ally, the United States. You have a brutal, raging war right on its eastern border in Ukraine. And then you've got these deepening political fractures and instability from within. It's a lot.
And that internal problem, it runs deep. I mean, look at the traditional powerhouses, the engines of the EU, France and Germany. Right now, they're just bogged down by their own domestic turmoil. And you have to think, when the core is weak like that, it makes it incredibly difficult for the entire Union to project any kind of strength or unity on the world stage. And just to make things even more complicated, let's throw China into the mix. The EU's relationship with China is, well, it's incredibly complex. They have this official strategy they call the triptych approach. Basically, they're trying to see China as three things all at once: a partner on global issues, a competitor in the economy, and a systemic rival when it comes to values and governance. Juggling those three hats? That is a massive strategic challenge, to say the least.
Okay, so that's the high level, the view from the strategist. But what does all this pressure actually feel like for regular people on the ground across the continent?
Well, if you want a pulse check, just look at what people are saying online. And let me tell you, you are not going to find unity there. What you find is messy, it's passionate, and it reveals a really deeply divided public sentiment that leaders have to somehow navigate.
Take this comment, for example. For some folks, the whole Transatlantic alliance doesn't feel like a partnership of equals at all. This quote here really captures that frustration. This feeling that a close relationship with the U.S. is just, well, a form of subservience.
And then you have others who take that feeling even further, basically drawing a moral equivalence between the big global powers. This kind of view sees both the U.S. and Russia as aggressive bullies on the world stage, and it really starts to question if there even is a good guy in all of this.
But the division isn't just about how Europe relates to the outside world. The distrust runs deep inside the EU itself. You see these incredibly intense accusations flying around, like this one, suggesting that some member states are actually working against the Union's interests, acting as Trojan horses for Russia.
So all these words, all this division, it's all backed up by a very real economic conflict. Because in this fight, Europe's primary weapon hasn't been military might. It's been financial. We're talking about a massive, sweeping sanctions regime against Russia.
Right from the start, back in 2022, the West unleashed this just unprecedented wave of sanctions designed to completely cripple Russia's war economy. It started with targeting specific people and banks, but it got more and more complex over time. Soon, they were trying to close loopholes for critical technology, things like computer chips, and even going after financial institutions anywhere in the world that were helping Russia's war effort.
And maybe one of the biggest moves of all was freezing Russia's assets held overseas. We're talking about a staggering $300 billion in central bank funds, just frozen. That's a massive financial blow, and the whole idea was to starve Russia's war chest.
And did it work? Well, the sanctions definitely had a real measurable impact. You could see it clearly in key parts of the Russian economy, especially the ones that really relied on Western parts, like cars and planes. I mean, just look at car production. It plummeted by 2/3 in a single year. That's huge.
But, and this is a really big but, here's the twist.
Russia has proven to be remarkably resilient. They've found ways to blunt the impact. They've reoriented their trade, found new partners who are perfectly happy to ignore Western sanctions, and have gotten really clever at exploiting loopholes in the global system to get the stuff they need.
So if all that economic pressure hasn't delivered the knockout blow everyone was hoping for, it leads you to the ultimate, incredibly difficult question. How does this war actually end? So let's play this out. Imagine a hypothetical peace summit in 2025. What would that even look like? Well, it gives us a glimpse into a potential future, and what it exposes are two deeply, almost irreconcilably different ideas about what peace even means.
On one side of the table, you have this potential land for peace deal. The idea would be Ukraine cedes territory to Russia in exchange for some security guarantees and an end to the fighting. But on the other side, you have the absolute steadfast position of Ukraine and EU, a full restoration of all pre-war borders, sanctions have to continue, and a clear path forward for Ukraine to join NATO. The gap between those two positions, it's just immense. It's a chasm.
In this quote from President Zelensky, man, it just crystallizes the entire Ukrainian perspective. For him, history has already taught this lesson. Ceding territory doesn't bring peace. It just becomes a springboard for the next attack. It's an incredibly powerful rejection of any deal that involves giving up 1 inch of Ukrainian land.
So where does all this leave Europe? Well, caught in an incredibly precarious position, squeezed between its allies, its adversaries, and its own deep internal divisions.
And that brings us to the final, critical question. With these old, reliable alliances fraying and all these new threats rising, can Europe actually find a single, unified voice to decide its own future? The answer to that question, well, it isn't just academic. It's going to define the security, the stability, and the very future of an entire continent for decades to come.